Hi, this is Gary DeToniquote from MoreThanASnapshot.com. I've created this little rubric to help to critique images. I do a lot of image critiques for people that are in my Intro to Photography class, and if you would like to have any of your images critiqued, you can join my class at MoreThanASnapshot.com. Or occasionally I will do some critiques from a Facebook group that I have called MoreThanASnapshot.com or another group called The Challenge. Um, In this case, we're looking at some basic categories that we can go through to figure out if we did a good job on our image. This really should be something that you can use to sort of self-monitor your images to see if you did a good job or not. And so I broke it down into three simple categories. The first one being interest, then to composition, and to image quality. And within each of these main categories, I have some specific things that I would look at. Under interest, we would look for, does the image tell a story? Does it have impact, mood or feeling, or creativity? And by creativity, I mean, did the photographer use some sort of a technique to make the image more interesting? It's not just a snapshot. They did something special to make it more interesting. Under composition, we have, did they define a subject? Does the overall composition have balance? Visual weight is equally distributed. Does it meet the rule of thirds? Are there any distractions taking our eyes away from the subject? Does it use any compositional techniques like line, shape, pattern, texture, color, framing, any of those sort of things? And are there any mergers? I'm sure there's some other compositional things, but this is the first go around with this rubric, so we'll see how this works. Under image quality, some basic technical things like, is it sharp? Is the right thing sharp? Is the exposure good? Not too bright, not too dark? Is the lighting good? Post-processing, how you fixed it up in whatever image editing software you're using. So I thought I'd go through an anonymous image the first time and go through some of these things and see how this rubric works. I'm going to sort of the more important thing is to talk about each one of these qualities, but I might assign a number from 4 to 1. You can see 4 being excellent and 1 being low quality. So with excellent, I mean, you look at an image and say, wow, that's really good. I wish I had taken that photo. Whereas very good might be, all right, yeah, that's a real good image. It'll look good in a portfolio or print or online or whatever it might be. Acceptable, just maybe a snapshot. And low quality means there's something wrong with the image, either technically or creatively or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm going by when I critique, and then let's go through one and see how it goes. The other thing to remember was when I critique the photos, I'm not saying that I could do it any better, or that there's anything wrong with your photo. If you like your photo, then it's perfectly fine. I'm just going through some common photography, sort of not really rules, but guidelines that people usually follow, and I'm trying to see if your photo stacks up to that, and that will give us some indication of the overall quality of the image. So let's take a look at a photo and see if we can apply some of these things to it. Okay, so here we have a field of sunflowers, and first we'll check out the interest. So one of the first things was storytelling. And I don't think this is really a storytelling image, unless maybe some people might think so. But I don't see really a storytelling image in this one. The next thing was, does the image have impact? And I would say yes, that the whole blur effect that we're getting here is giving us an unusual view of this, and that's giving it some impact. Then we could look at mood or feeling, and The blur effect, I don't know. Maybe it does give a mood or a feeling. I don't think quite so much. Um, and then the last one, creativity. I think it definitely has creativity. So the photographer here must have used a slow shutter speed and moved the zoom while taking the exposure and created this sort of radial blur type of effect. And so I do think that it's a creative effect. It's not just a snapshot. The photographer did do something special to try to liven up this image. So overall, since it probably had two of the four things, um, and I like the image, I probably would give this a 4 in the interest category. Again, you might not agree. We'll go on to composition. Defining a subject. So when we look at this, I think it does clearly define a subject. Our eyes are centered right here in this center flower, and then the rest of this is supporting and bringing our eyes to the flower. Um, does it have balance or the rule of thirds? I think those two go together pretty well. It doesn't really meet the rule of thirds. It's kind of the opposite of that. The flower is directly in the middle. Um, and I think it could work with the rule of thirds if this were cropped, um, sort of maybe something like that. Um, but I do think that it also works this way without cropping it. Even though this is in the center, there are times when the rest of the image is visually balanced by this sort of spiral blur out from the center. When you have this kind of symmetry, it's okay to put your subject in the middle. So I think that that could work. Um, distractions. Are there any distractions in the image? Well, no, it's pretty much just a field of sunflowers. It's just the way they were with the blur. There are possibly some trees or something up here, but they're dark and out of the way. I don't think they really distract from the image at all. Um, Next, we have line, shape, pattern, texture, color, framing. So let's see if it's using any of these things. Well, I do think that the blurred lines are all bringing our eye to the center, so it is using line. It is sort of a pattern, the repeating pattern of flowers. And color, definitely yellow. It's one dominant color, yellow, with the supporting color of green. So I think that all works well together. Um, Shape, the overall thing may sort of have a circular shape. There's no framing. There's no mergers. It's not really a texture shot. But it did have, like I said, line and pattern and color. So again, it's got three of those things. It does have a well-defined subject and in balance. So I think I would have to score it a 4 also in composition. Um, and there were no mergers. Okay, so next we'll go on to the image quality, and we'll look at sharpness first. So overall, when I look at the image, it does appear to be in focus. If I zoom in to 100% on the center, this center flower is in focus. There is some a little bit of artifacting. Maybe it was shot at a little bit higher ISO, or um, maybe it was a little bit overly compressed or something. I see a little bit of jagginess, not much. So the image quality is not bad. It is maybe not perfectly sharp, but you can see even out in the leaves that are under the blur, those are also in focus. So it's not something that I would complain about, but it's not perfect. Um, the exposure. The exposure throughout the image is very even. It was not a hard exposure situation. We have, mostly midtones. There's no overexposed highlights. There's no underexposed shadows. So I'm not really seeing a problem with that. The lighting, again, there was no problem with the lighting. It was very even, flat lighting. You might say that, well, maybe the lighting is not giving us some added impact, but it's not taking away from the image. And the post-processing, I think maybe could have done a little bit of noise removal, maybe could have cropped it. I think the overexposure there's no over or under exposure, so there's no exposure adjustment needed. A pretty good job with the post-processing. And overall, I like the image. So I think maybe in this category I'd give it a 3 instead of a 4. But overall, it's a pretty strong image. And so with 2 4s and a 3, I'd probably give it a 4 overall. So again, I'm going to try and use this little rubric to maybe critique some of my class images instead of using a text comment. Maybe I'll do a bunch of images, and we'll see how this rubric works out when I apply it to more images. So be sure to post in the comments and let me know what you think. Thank you. This has been Gary D. Toniquote from morethanasnapshot.com.